everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so very excited to have you here. If you've seen my last video, I was definitely in a fat reading slump and I just got out of it, which led me to read all of these books plus some on my Kindle. I think I ended up reading like 8 books this month, something like that, 8 or 9, which is pretty high for me. Usually I normally get about in the 6 to 7 range, so I did make it up a couple extra, which is pretty nice, but that means I have lots of opinions which I don't remember, more importantly, but I have to share with you. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, I did 100% skip my April recap because I only read like a couple books, obviously, like I said, major book slump, but I'm gonna go over those books that I read. So this one will end up being like an April/May wrap up. Hopefully you're okay with that. It's not gonna be that many more, I promise you. The first book that I started in April and completely read all the way through was Finding Chica by Mitch Albom. This one is about this man and his wife, Mitch, obviously. This is a true story, by the way. He and his wife go and they are either helping own or just assist this orphanage in Haiti. So I guess in like 2010 or something like that, there was a massive earthquake, I believe. Yes, an earthquake that went through Haiti, and Chica's mom ends up dying. So she gets brought into this orphanage where they later kind of discover, I think she has like a massive brain tumor. It's a really life-threatening thing, and Mitch and his wife end up taking Chica back to the United States so that they can care for her and try to get her the medical attention that she really needs. And since they weren't able to have kids, whether or not they were late in life or it just never happened, I don't remember what the case was, but they didn't have any kids of their own, so they kind of ended up bringing Chica in and she became like a child to them. And it was just a story of them with her life, and just kind of how she grew up from being in Haiti, being with her friends, and all the issues that she was kind of going through. And it was really inspirational because she was such a sweet little kid. And even though she was really going through it the whole time, she was still so inspirational and just really uplifted everybody and had a positive attitude, even when the people that weren't going through it were upset for her and devastated and not having a good time, whatever. She definitely brought the light to everybody, even in the dark times, which I really liked this. I thought it was super sweet. I really enjoyed it. I don't think about it that often, but when I do think about it, it's just really heartwarming and sweet. I really enjoyed it. I ended up not rating this. I don't really want to rate a lot of true stories, memoirs, and stuff like that, just because I don't want to be like, oh, I didn't like your story, I'm gonna give it however many stars, whatever. The only time I will do that is if it just really doesn't relate to me. I don't really have any relation to it, so I don't care for it as much. It's not something that's, I don't want to say entertaining, but it doesn't strike a chord with me by any means, so that's the only time I'll give it a rating necessarily. But this one, I just don't feel like you can. I can't be like, oh yeah, this is a bad book if I didn't like it. There were, I think, little parts in this, and the way that he kind of wrote it and the way that he brought Chica's spirit into the book was definitely kind of odd. I didn't care for that as much. I didn't love the way that she was like there in the book sometimes, but other than that, which you'll know what I mean if you read it, it sounds really terrible, but it's not, I promise. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super sweet. It was definitely very sad, heartwarming, all the things. I would highly recommend this one if you are wanting something more just as a palate cleanser. It definitely wasn't super long. It was like under 100 pages. Not 100, excuse me. It was around 200 pages. Yeah, like 235-ish. There's a little picture of them together. She's so cute. Oh my gosh. It was definitely a very upsetting book, but it was definitely very good, and I highly, highly recommend it. If you've not read anything nonfiction, if you are wanting to read something nonfiction that's not just super lifey, I don't know. I just feel like it's inspirational. I think that she's so sweet. I loved her story. Definitely very sad for her. It was not something that I wanted to read necessarily, but I definitely am glad that I picked it up. The second book that I ended up reading, this one was one of my honorable mentions from March. I didn't finish it in March, so I rolled it over into April, and I ended up reading this book before I finished this one, but I read The Coworker by Frida McFadden. I really don't have much to say about this one. I read this, like, obviously last month. I don't remember much of it, to be honest. I know I didn't care for it that much. It definitely wasn't my favorite, and the ending was just really, it didn't resolve anything. I feel like it was not necessarily a plot twist. There wasn't any part of it that got me at all. I don't know. I would say that this is definitely one of my least favorite Frida McFadden books. I don't think about it. I haven't thought about it since I read it. I kind of forgot that I read it, to be honest. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. I didn't care for it. I think she has so many better books. I read The Teacher just before this, and I liked that one a lot more than I liked this one. It just, the characters were really unlikable. I didn't care for them at all. It wasn't plot twisty at all. It just I don't know. There was only one part that I was like, oh, I didn't really expect that, but it wasn't like shocking. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. You know what I mean? Not a fan. I ended up giving that one a 3 stars. I think now, if I were to look back at it, I could see myself giving it a 2 star. I don't really know though. I guess like at some point of me reading it, I was somewhat entertained. It was like just alright. It was fine. But I'll give it a 3 star. I'll keep it at a 3 star. That's what I gave it at the time. Who knows what I was thinking. But I wouldn't recommend this. If you're thinking about reading it, probably pick something else, unless if this is the last book of hers that you've read and you're trying to just hit them all, then it's fine, read it, whatever. But I wouldn't say it was anything interesting. Then I picked up Divine Rivals. I think I started this for a reading challenge, one of my mystery videos. I don't know. I don't think I ended up posting it, so I don't think that you ended up seeing it at all. But I really liked this one. It definitely was a more heartfelt romance, I feel like, than anything that I've read in a while. Most of the romance books that I've read here recently just kind of fall in that category of romance that I don't necessarily care for. They're not bad, they're still entertaining, but there's just a weird thing that I don't really care for, and I can't really put my finger on it just yet. I don't really know what I don't like about them. I just know that they're not my type of romance books, I guess. I don't know, but this one was like a romantasy, I think is what that would be classified as. And it was very good. It was not too lovey-dovey. I think maybe that's my problem. I don't like when it's too lovey-dovey too fast. I more prefer a very good slow burn, and that's very much what this was. I don't even think they were interested in each other, really. They were like enemies to lovers. Not quite enemies, but like they didn't like each other to lovers, which was chef's kiss. It was very good. I'm trying to remember what it was about, because again, I don't know. I just know that I liked it and it was really good. Let's see. To my knowledge, there was something I didn't pay attention too much in the very beginning, like the beginning of the world and their magic and why they have magic and stuff and the gods of their world. I didn't quite get that, so I don't really remember, and that was a major point of the story. So for me, I didn't really click with that whenever I first read it. So going on, I was just like, okay, like I get it, but I don't get it because I didn't really get the backstory. But nonetheless, there's like 4 gods of their world or something like that, and these gods have the magic system, and that's how they have magic in the world. I don't know what type of magic the world possesses other than the 2 main characters have magical typewriters. They can write letters to each other and then send them back and forth through a wardrobe. So basically the main character thinks that she's sending letters to her brother when in fact she's not. Her arch nemesis of her paper company, or her newspaper company, I guess, he's actually the one getting these letters, and then he ends up writing her back and is like, hey, this isn't your brother, heads up. And they start writing back and forth. They develop feelings for each other. I think he knows who she is, but she doesn't know who he is. And he's trying to get her to fall for him in a real life and not just through the letters, but then they're also going to war and stuff like this. So there's a whole bunch going on. I really liked it though. I thought it was very good. It definitely was a more heartfelt romance book. That's what I was looking for. That's what I was wanting. Very slow burn. There was nothing physical, I think. And I think that there might have been like a couple spice scenes, maybe like one, but I don't think it depicted anything. I think it was very much just closed door. If I'm not mistaken, I could be so wrong. I don't remember, but I do know that it wasn't anything crazy. Maybe it wasn't closed door and it just wasn't descriptive at all. That might have been it. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was just not descriptive, which was actually very interesting because I don't love big spice scenes or anything like that, but I think doing it in the way that it did, if I'm thinking about it correctly, I don't know, again, I don't remember, but I think it was just like going through the motions. They weren't like describing anything. They weren't really getting into the nitty-gritties of what was going on. It was just like the mental feeling and like the connection, whatever. So definitely was not spicy by any means, which was really nice, but I ended up really enjoying it. I give it 4 stars. I think right after I finished it, or as I was reading it, I was already deciding that that's a book that I could go back and reread, which is a very good sign for me. There's not a whole lot of books that I enjoy enough to where I'd be interested in going back and rereading them. This is definitely one of those. I could see myself doing that at some point in the future, like way in the future when I don't really remember anything that happened, but that's a good sign. That means that I really enjoyed it. And then the only honorable mention that I had from April, which I'll get into in a second after it hits the point where I finish the book, but I started reading the second book Ruthless Vows. I was listening to the audiobook of Divine Rivals in the car and I finished it, and I couldn't get the audiobook for Ruthless Vows on the rest of my way back home, so I was really devastated. I didn't think that I was going to be interested in continuing this series for a while, but it got really, really good, and then they ended it on like a super high cliffhanger, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to know what happens next. I literally can't wait. I just have to go into the next book. So that's what I ended up doing. Now getting into all of the books that I read in May and solely in May. I started off with Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. After reading all of those on audiobook, I think, like I said, I read this like in the very beginning of April. So the rest of April I was just reading on my Kindle, and I think that put me in a slump. I did not want to read on my Kindle at all. I wanted to pick up a physical book, but I was struggling so hard with just getting through those books. I didn't want to pick up another book just in the middle of it, so that was a whole ordeal. But I ended up reading this one. This is the first book that I picked up, and I think I read this in like 24 hours-ish, a little bit over 24 hours. I really liked it. I thought that it was a very... Okay, we'll pause. Let me say this. I liked it. I enjoyed it, and it was a good thriller book. Not thriller. Yeah, I guess it was a thriller. For me, it was very thrilling. It was pretty good. I think maybe the first half. And then once we started getting into bringing more characters in, I started to not care about it as much. So this one's about a mom who lost her daughter a while back, and they don't really know what happened to her. They couldn't find her. They never found her. She just went missing, basically, and didn't know where she was, heard nothing from her. I think there was like stuff that they found of hers, things that made it look like she just ran away and then came back later on to get some stuff, ran away again, whatever. So they're thinking that she's just missing. They don't know where she is. That's pretty much it. Well, the mom ends up meeting this guy, and his daughter ends up looking just like her daughter that's missing. I don't even know if I can tell you anymore other than that. So in the lead up to her daughter going missing and all that stuff, that was interesting. But when it got to her meeting the guy and stuff, I didn't care for that as much. I really only liked the first half of the book. The ending was so whack. I don't understand at all where this was a good play, what kind of ending that they thought this would appeal to people. I don't know. It just not good. Didn't like it at all. There was like no plot twist really. I don't know. There like was, but there wasn't. And then I don't want to spoil it, but there was no figuring it out. It just kind of came out and that was it. Which, sorry if that's spoiling. It just weird. I didn't like it at all. I thought that it was very odd. But I will say about this, and I think I talked about this in some other video that I read the book in, this book made me feel some weird type of way. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you. Normally books don't get me. They don't get me like really upset, anything like that. This book at some point had me scared. I was sitting there and I was like really nervous to read the next chapter because I didn't know what was coming next, and I was just kind of worried about what was going on. I don't know why. I've never felt like that. Definitely not something that I expected just coming from this one, but I definitely felt a little weird somehow, some way. The main girl going missing and stuff like that, I was just really sad for her the whole time. It was just really upsetting, and then just, I don't know. Definitely very weird. I didn't expect to feel so heavy with this book, but I did for some odd reason. But I guess be careful going into this one. Definitely very weird. Definitely very ominous feeling that I got. But I ended up giving this one a 3 stars. It was not bad. Not bad at all. Again, I really only cared for the first half. I didn't like the last half at all, and the ending was just not good. Then surprisingly, I went straight into another mystery thriller book. I wouldn't say this one is thriller at all. This one really was just a mystery book, but I went straight into A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I enjoyed this book so much. It was so good, and I knew that the series was going to be pretty good. I knew that I was going to enjoy it, but I don't think that I thought it was going to be as good as it was. I figured it was just going to be like a little YA mystery. It wasn't going to be much to it, just simple stuff, like a very juvenile type case that we're solving. But I feel like it definitely wasn't that. It definitely was a lot more grown up than I expected. Obviously the girl's like in high school and stuff, and she's working on a high school project, and that's what's drawing her to actually do research for this case and stuff. But it was a lot more interesting than I expected. I figured, like I said, it was just going to be this little girl that was trying to figure out what happened to somebody, or she was going to try to solve a murder and just come up with it somehow. But I feel like she was pretty smart. I feel like she was very clever in the way that she got people to talk to her and stuff, which is very out of left field for what I expected. I'm not complaining at all. I really enjoyed this, actually. So we're following our main character, Pip, as she's trying to prove the innocence of, I think his name's Sal. I'm not sure. I don't know if he's convicted murderer or what the deal is, but everybody in her town says that he is the one that killed Andy Bell 5 years ago whenever she disappeared. They didn't have a body for her. Nobody found her or anything like that, but they were just saying that he murdered her. I don't know. That was kind of obnoxious, and I don't know how that works. Obviously, she's just missing, so I don't know how they were pinning murder on him, but I'm not a criminal justice person. I don't know anything about that, so, like, don't listen to me. But Sal was found dead in the woods. They assumed that he just committed suicide after Andy went missing, and that he was the one that did it because of that. It just was very weird, but Pip kind of saw through it. She didn't think that he was the one that did it, and she was out on a mission to try to figure out who actually did it and to prove Sal's innocence for her school project, something like that, whatever the case was. I really don't have many complaints with this, to be honest. I really liked this one. It was very good. I enjoyed all of the extra little details in it. There was a lot of just extra little details, information and stuff. You get like the police records, communication, interviews, whatever. She ended up logging all of her chats that she had with people, the interviews that she conducted and stuff, and then those pages ended up in the book. So it's not all just like a book that you're reading through, you're also reading the information that she picked up on and all of her interviews and conversations that she's having with people, which obviously you would normally do that in a book, but the way that it's written out is a lot more visually pleasing, I feel like, so that's what makes this an even more exciting book, in my opinion. This one was fast-paced. Again, I read this one I think in 24 hours, something like that, a little bit over 24 hours maybe. Really good. I don't think I have any complaints about it, to be honest. This one is a very clean book. I guess there was some romance in it, like a subplot of romance. I didn't care for the subplot of romance. It was not anything that I was concerned about. I didn't really focus on that, like, by any means. There was no part of me that was drawn to that, so that wasn't necessarily anything that I paid attention to, but I know that I have heard a lot of people talk about the subplot of romance was super sweet. I didn't know anything about that. That was kind of more of a slow burn interest. They've had slow feelings, I guess. Not really feelings. They just became friends and then started liking each other. I don't know. Obviously, it progresses throughout the series, but in this first book, definitely very calm, tame. Language wasn't bad. I don't think there was many cuss words at all. Maybe just like a couple. So, I enjoyed it. I really liked this one. So I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. Not bad. Again, I really can't complain. I don't think that I remember anything bad about this book. There's nothing that I didn't like. I think the ending was definitely not something that I guessed. For these books, I pretty much just came up with one conclusion and then stuck with it the whole time. I wasn't really trying to figure out who did it, but the ending I didn't expect. It wasn't anything that I saw coming, so it got me. I'll give it to it. Continuing to get out of my reading slump, I didn't want to go straight into the second book, so I ended up picking Carrie Soda's Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I adored this book so much. I really did. I loved the tennis aspect of it. I loved the personality of Carrie Soto. I thought that, yeah, even though she was sometimes obnoxious and she was so big-headed and just, like, why do you need so hardly to defend yourself against everybody else? It was so weird, and her, like, mindset towards this whole thing was just so odd. I feel like this is not something that I would ever do. I would never try to come out of retirement to prove myself to anybody, because she already did. She already proved herself. But then she wanted to continue to prove herself because she wasn't going to let somebody take her title away from her. Very interesting. I think the only thing that I didn't care for about her was the way that she was very much the queen bee, and she worked hard for what she got, and then the other people are stealing it from her. And in her mind, they weren't necessarily working the same way that she was. They kind of just got lucky. They got a lucky break. And so that was kind of obnoxious because they're trying really hard to accomplish what she's accomplished and stuff, and they have different issues that they had to come up against. You know, Carrie Soto had all of her people that were against her and all this stuff, versus the person that's trying to come for her title now has this expectation that she has to live up to, that she's not as good as Carrie because she doesn't have the proper footwork, she doesn't do everything as gracefully, she's not as elegant, she's not as good of a player necessarily, she doesn't have the technique that Carrie does, but she's still doing better, essentially. I don't know. It was very interesting, but I did really enjoy the book. It was definitely something that kept me captivated the entire time. I didn't want to put it down at all. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's style of writing. I think that it's so good. It makes me feel like I'm reading a nonfiction book, but I'm not. Like, I read Daisy Jones and the Six, and for a long time, I thought it was a true story. I thought it was based on a real band. I didn't really realize that it was based on a band that wasn't true. So it was very weird for me to do that. But all of her books definitely feel very real. They feel raw. They feel like it's something that's actually happened. And I don't know. I don't know. Every time I read her books, I get a feeling. They just feel good. They feel right. I don't know. Love it. I ended up lending that one to my brother, so he has that one right now, so I don't have the actual book, but I gave that one a 4 stars. I think that at some point I could definitely bump that up. I think all of her books I could bump up to like a 5 stars, just because the feelings that I get whenever I read her books are completely unmatched. I don't know how. I don't understand. I don't get it. And I know that they're not for everybody. I know not everybody cares for them and stuff, but for some reason they hit my heart in a weird way that I can't explain it. So stick around at some point for my reevaluation, my re-rating, because I feel like I could definitely give that one a 5 stars. Just because I'm thinking about it so frequently, and because just so good. So good. So then I picked back up Ruthless Vows, or at least I finished it. I think I listened to this one mainly on audiobook, but I don't remember. Something like that. I think I read some of it, audiobook some of it, just like half and half, I guess. I don't really have much to say about this one because, again, I don't think that I can say too much. Just other than the relationship continued, I was very excited for them to come together again, be together, the whole 9. So I'll give you like a sneak peek, I guess, because they got separated in the war. So they're trying to come back to each other, I guess. Can I say that? I don't know, but I don't feel like that's too big of a spoiler, like, at all. So I don't know. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Super good. I gave this one a 4 stars as well. Definitely just a continuation of the first book. It didn't feel too far off. Sometimes you get like a part 2 and they kind of stray away from the original book. They don't really feel like they're part of the same series necessarily, but this one definitely felt like an exact continuation. It felt like she finished Divine Rivals and then immediately started writing Ruthless Vows without any break. You know, it could have just been one book. This one didn't give me any type of weird feeling. I didn't feel like it wasn't a part of the book at all. I didn't feel like it was straying too far away from the original story. It definitely was just staying on the correct path, and I really liked it. So I ended up giving that one a 4 stars as well. Overall, I really liked the little series. It was super good. I would definitely highly recommend. It wasn't anything spicy at all. It definitely wasn't this ridiculously hard fantasy book to understand. It was super simple, just a little romantasy, and I really liked it. Then moving on to my book 2 that I didn't really understand. It didn't really feel like part of the series. Maybe an unpopular opinion. I don't know, but I read Good Girl, Bad Blood. This one was not bad. Not bad at all. But obviously the first book we're talking about these people that are in her town, right? She goes to school. She didn't go to school with them, but she goes to school with the victim's brother. So she's trying to figure all of that out for her school project. Now, picking up this book, we're starting off with her starting a podcast based on everything that happened in this book. So she's going over all of the findings from here in the first 100-something pages of this book, which definitely threw me off. I did not like recapping everything. Again, we know how I feel about epilogues. This just felt like a 100-page epilogue in the beginning of this book, which I didn't like. Didn't care for. Obviously, there were pieces of it that definitely play out later on, which I understand, I really do get, but I didn't really care for it. I feel like it could have just been wrapped up in one podcast episode, maybe a couple chapters. But hey, who am I to judge? Whatever. So this one follows Pip and Ravi. Now they're together, they're friends, I don't know if they're in a relationship or what, but since they work together to try to prove Ravi's brother's innocence, he now comes together, he's like her assistant, whatever. So they decide that they are going to work together to solve another case when one of her friend's brothers ends up going missing. So she goes to the police, tries to get the cops to do something. They aren't listening to her, they won't do anything. They say they have other people that they need to find, other people with a higher priority than the brother, and so she takes it upon herself to investigate, even though she made a promise to herself that she would never do it again for the sake of herself, her family, all this stuff. She doesn't want to put her nose in other people's business and it blow up in her face, kind of like it did in the first book. So she's trying to figure out where this missing person went, what happened to him, and it's good. I'm enjoying it, right? It's good, but then they start going down a rabbit hole. At least to me, it feels like a rabbit hole. It feels like they're chasing something that doesn't feel right, which it kind of relates to the last book. They kind of tie in together in a weird way, but this one, it just doesn't feel like the same. I don't know. There's a lot more cussing in this, which obviously they're growing up. She's getting older. She's going through a lot more stuff. She's not the same Pip that she was before she started investigating her first murder. But this, it feels a little bit different, which I get. She's growing. She's becoming a different person. That's great. I understand. But it really feels like she got to the point where she's trying to figure out how to put in the information of all the backstory to everything and like what actually happened, and then she just kind of didn't really know what to do or didn't have enough time to finish it, and then just threw something out that just felt kind of weird. Again, I don't know. Let me know if you felt a little weird about the direction that this book ended up going in, because it definitely was not what I was expecting at all. It just felt out of left field, and it didn't feel like it really followed along with the story. I was expecting town secrets and town problems and stuff and people in the town doing something, but it really wasn't that. It was just it was just different. Just different. Since I didn't care for this one as much, I ended up giving this one a 3-star. It's not bad. Again, it's not a bad book. It just was so weird, and I felt like it was just not fitting. It didn't feel like the series that I started. It felt like we're following more of a true crime thing versus just a regular murder. I don't know. Maybe it was because of the podcast and stuff, so it needed to be more of a high caliber type thing. And obviously Pip went through some more stuff, so she's definitely evolving as a person. She's changing. She's becoming different, whatever. I get it, but this one was not my favorite at all. Then I decided to go straight into book 3. I think that this was a little mistake, because as much as I preferred this book over the second one, it put me in a little bit of a slump. I was not wanting to read it as much. I feel like it was not repetitive, but I felt like I was reading the same thing kind of. So I wasn't as eager to finish this one, even though I was enjoying it a lot more. I didn't really find myself wanting to pick this one up as much, so I kind of had to force myself to finish it. But again, not bad. I noticed that the cussing picked up a lot more in this, which it is what it is. I don't love to read a lot of cussing. I don't cuss myself, like, ever. It's not my favorite thing to see in the book, because again, I don't relate to it, so I don't find it necessary, whereas some people probably do. Some people just take it as regular language, but to me it's just unnecessary language. So there was a little bit more in this, which again, she's growing, she's evolving, she's changing, she's had so many bad things happen to her, she's different, she's not the same Pip that we knew in the beginning of the story. Fine, I get it. So it makes sense. It makes sense to the book, which is why I'm not like complaining. It's not like completely unnecessary. I'm not saying that it is necessary by any means, but there is a point behind it and a reason, so I can kind of get behind that a little bit more. But this one basically just wraps up, I think, everything. I don't even know which, given I don't remember, obviously, like, there's not going to be any part that I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, there's this one little thing that never got wrapped up that I don't remember. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there wasn't anything that didn't get wrapped up and solved and whatever from the first book, because at the end of the first book, there were still a lot of things that she found out that she didn't quite get answers to. I think for the most part, everything got solved. I think everything got revealed by the end of the series. Everything that wasn't solved in the first book definitely came to light within the second and third book, and it really just wrapped all up. I really liked this one. Again, I don't think I can say too much about this, and I don't really want to, but I liked this one a lot. I've seen people talk about how Pip wasn't the same and that they didn't expect her to do some of the things that she did in this one. She just really changed as a character, which, yes, she did very drastically change, but I don't necessarily think it was a bad thing. I don't know. I've seen a lot of reviews talking about her character in this book and how she was and the changes that she made and all of the things that she was expecting people to do and all the things that she was asking people to do for her that was just kind of not right. But I think that it really showed what all happened to her throughout the series, and I really liked it. So I gave this one a 4 stars. Very good. I would highly recommend the series. Don't let me talking ill about the second book deter you from reading it. It was very, very good. I highly recommend it. Then I read The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did, like, at all. I figured that the repeating of Valentine's Day was going to annoy the crap out of me, but it didn't. It really didn't. And the way that she explained everything in a completely different light. Nothing was ever really the same, even though it was the same day, just repeating over and over again. Everything happened so differently, and the way that she talked about it, she didn't really go over and reiterate all of the things that kept happening if that makes any sense. Like, if her friend talked to her about this, it wasn't a conversation between her and her friend every single Valentine's Day that repeated, which was so nice because I was expecting it to just be too much and me to be like, oh my gosh, this is getting so annoying. I don't want to finish reading this. But that was not the case at all. I was hooked on this. I will mention that there was one little part that I was kind of slumping through. I don't know if it was just I was a little bored or I wasn't reading it in a situation where I was fully engaged in everything. Whatever the case was, there was a part where her and somebody went and was out having a fun day together, and I just didn't really get a lot of the first part of it. I think it just went in one eyeball and out the other, I guess. I don't know. But that was a little bit I guess, a little too much, a little bit too long and drawn out. I understand why it was, though, but for me it was just that was the only part that was just like a little bit over. Other than that, it was really good. I loved this book. I think there was a third act breakup in it. Let's be honest here. Most every romance book has a third act breakup. The third act breakup kind of annoyed me. I didn't really care for that as much. I very much was like, okay, these are the facts that you're presented with, and now you're upset that this is not happening, and I get it. I would be a little thrown off too. I'd be like, hey, we just did all this, and like now you're telling me that you aren't even interested, even though you told me you weren't interested in the beginning? Like, I thought I could change your mind, which that's very much how she thought, I believe. But at the end of the day, like, she kind of knew, so... But I liked it. I thought it was so good. I love the writing. It just felt really wholesome and nice, and just, this is what I feel like I need out of every romance book, other than that third act breakup. I don't need that. We don't have to do that. But this one is so good. I give it 4 stars. I would highly recommend it if you were wanting a romance book that's just sweet and nice and just... check this one out. Then I read Perfect Sun by Frida McFadden. I started this one on audiobook because I wanted something to listen to in the car back and forth from church. And I ended up not being able to finish it as an audiobook. I just wanted to go ahead and finish it on my Kindle because I was enjoying it that much. It was good. I don't think I really had any complaints about it. I really liked it. Definitely was a plot twist. Definitely threw me for a loop. I don't even know what it was about, to be honest. It was this lady whose son is a psychopath, something like that. She's noticed psychopathic tendencies from him. I think he told her whenever he was 4 that he couldn't wait to be married because he wanted to have a wife so he could throw her in a hole and watch her starve to death, something like that. And so her life mission is to keep him away from any woman that he is interested in because she does not want him to get married to somebody, throw her in a hole, and starve her to death. So she's scared that that's what he's gonna do, that's what's gonna happen, just because he's had some type of issues and stuff growing up and being in school and with his friends and everything like that. So she ends up paying an ex-private investigator or something like that. I think that's what it was. So she pays him to kind of help keep the girls away from her son, so that way he doesn't do anything bad to him or anything like that. But one of the girls that he has a crush on in his class ends up going missing, and the mom is freaking out because she ended up not being able to keep this one away from her son, unfortunately. I was hooked on it. It was very good. Plot twisty. I saw it coming. I figured that might be a possibility with the way that this character was acting. I was like, okay, I'm sure that this is something that they're either going to be doing together or it's going to be this person. So it ended up being that person, but nonetheless, I think a lot of people would find this very plot twisty. I liked it. I think that this one was a pretty decent Frida McFadden book, so I ended up giving it a 3 stars. Pretty average across the board, pretty good. I enjoyed it. I think it was actually pretty decent as an audiobook. I wouldn't complain about it. And then my last book that I read in May, I just finished this one not too long ago. I finally read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Look, I've heard so many people saying that this is such a terrible memoir and that there's no depth to it and that she's talking about all this stuff and she's talking about an eating disorder and there's no silver lining to it. There's not any helping people out. There's no like real message to the story, and I think that was probably intentional, or maybe if it isn't, I don't know, but at the end of the day, like, it's a memoir. Why are you mad that there's no silver lining? Like, maybe there wasn't a silver lining to her. If you read the book, like, there was no getting out of it. She didn't really want to. She didn't want to get out of it for a long time, and then by the time she did, she's just doing it on her own terms. There's nothing that she has to share about it that is like, oh, well, here's tips and whatever, because she didn't want to do that. It's not about how to help people. It's about her helping herself. This book, I don't think that this book is like a memoir as a lot of people would say, like a book to help people going through this stuff. I think it was genuinely just, this is what I went through. this is me healing. This is me trying to heal. Me putting myself out there, me sharing this is me actually putting the information out in the open. Because if you read the book, she was hiding everything. She didn't want anybody to know. She didn't want anybody to know about her mom and the things that was going on. She didn't want anybody to know about her eating disorder, any of that. So for so long, this has been something that she kind of kept to herself and that she kept internally. She didn't even want to tell a therapist. So I'm sure that part of her healing is to actually share her story and for other people to hear it. It's not like to help people. It's not something that is for other people. It's for herself. It's for her healing. You know what I mean? That's just what I got from it. So I feel like everybody that was talking so negatively about her not making an impact with the book, I don't necessarily think that that was what that was about. To me, just reading the book didn't necessarily scream that that's what her intentions were. She really just is sharing her own story. This is what happened to her, and this is what everybody from day one has been telling her that she needs to do. She needs to share, she needs to talk about it so that way she can get better. And I think that's kind of what she ended up doing through this book. I don't think that every book is necessary to help people. I don't think that if I wanted to write a memoir and talk about my life, I don't think that I would have to direct it to being some helpful, life-changing piece of literature. I can write a book about whatever I want. So can she. So I think everybody's opinions on that was definitely very weird, which again, entitled to your own opinion, valid. I don't agree with it necessarily, but doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think in the same way that to me it doesn't actually matter what you think. You know what I mean? Not in a bad way, it doesn't really matter to me what your opinions on it were. Unless if I'm trying to get some sort of insight out of you, which I wasn't. I was just curious as to why people were giving it a 1 star. I also saw a lot of people giving it a 1 star because of the audiobook. And again, I don't think that she was doing this to put on a show for us. We see this throughout the book. This is a pivotal point throughout the book that she does not like acting. She's never liked it. It makes her nervous. It makes her uncomfortable, whatever the case is. So the fact that people are mad at her because her voice is monotone or whatever in the audiobook, I actually didn't listen to the audiobook, so I don't really know. But they were talking about that she has no personality when narrating the audiobook to us, when half of the book was that she doesn't like acting. So of course she's not going to put on a show for the audiobook. She's not going to sit there and act out a book where the whole book she was talking about how she doesn't want to act. That's not something that she's ever wanted to do. That's never been her goal in life. I just feel like some of the points were maybe missed, which again, I'm not one to pick up on all the points ever. So me saying this, it could be so wrong, but that's just my interpretation of it. That's what I got from it. So the 1 star reviews kind of threw me for a loop, which I normally don't read a bunch of reviews, but I feel like this one I definitely wanted to because, like I said, I was just curious as to what people actually have to say negatively about somebody's life. I don't get that. I really don't. And again, I've read memoirs in the past, and if I don't relate to it, sometimes I have a hard time being entertained by it, which obviously that's not the goal of memoirs. But if I'm reading a memoir from somebody that I don't know, I don't necessarily care about, I've read memoirs from people that Nick likes, and I don't know anything about them, so I'm reading their memoir, which is good. It's obviously their story. I have no right to say, oh, it's bad, but it's not something that resonates with me. I don't click with it. I don't understand it, so that's where I would give it a, lower rating versus people being like, oh, she didn't do this right. I don't know. It's just weird. I don't get it, but to each their own. Everybody's allowed to have their own opinions. They're allowed to give it a 1 star. They're allowed to think it's a lousy book. I don't know. To each their own, though. I thought it was a little bit more eye-opening, very interesting. I definitely never would have expected that. It's sad to go back and look at some of the things that she was in or something like that and just see. But I really liked it. I thought it was super good. Definitely not anything that I would have to complain about. Very eye-opening, very interesting. Commend her for telling her story. Now on to my May honorable mentions. I've been listening to The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez on audiobook. Look, I'm sorry, I don't really care for it that much. It says I'm 77% of the way through it. I don't know, it's too much cussing, too much weirdness. The whole thing is just miscommunication. Nobody's talking to each other about the things that need to be talked about, so it's just very weird. I don't know, if you can't have kids, just tell him. Obviously he's into you. Obviously you're into him. Your situationship is not helping anything. I can see that, you can see that, he can see that. Just either end it or tell him what's up. I don't know. I don't know. I don't care for it that much. It's not headed in a direction that I love. It hasn't been in a direction that I've loved for a long time. They cuss all the time. I don't love that, which I think that that's something that I just recently realized that I'm not a fan of, but I guess I'll let you know at the end of this month what I actually think of the book as a whole once I'm done with it, but as of right now, I don't know. And then the second and last one I'm reading right now, Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I'm in the middle of it. I don't know what my deal is. I don't really care for this one either. This one's very weird. It's this lady that she watches her son murder this guy, and then she ends up going back in time, I guess to pinpoint the beginning of this crime and to try to stop it or something. I don't really know, but I'm 359 pages in, and it's just okay. It's not my favorite. It's like interesting, and there's things that are happening that I'm like intrigued by. I'm curious to see what happens, but I just don't like it that much. It's not that great. I don't know. Maybe by the end I'll really enjoy it or something, or I'll completely change my mind. I don't know. But as of right now, it's just not my favorite. Even though I was in a massive reading slump in April, I ended up picking all of these up, minus that one. These up in May, and this one in April, obviously with some extra books here and there on my Kindle, but I'm not gonna complain. Not that bad. I feel like I read a good variety of different books. I feel like there wasn't just a lot of thrillers, a lot of romance. It was definitely very, obviously I guess it was a little thriller heavy because I read the series and then Miss Lisa Jewell's book over here, but I read a lot of different stuff. I'm trying to keep myself out of a book slump as much as possible. I'm not trying to go back into it because that was ridiculous. So bad. But if you haven't watched that video, you can go watch it and see all of my in-depth reactions that I had to at least these and Carrie Soto's back. These are all just the opinions and thoughts that I can remember, which are very minuscule. I don't really have many memories of the books this month, unfortunately, but that's okay. I'll work on it for next month. Obviously, I haven't filmed one of these in a hot minute, so they're all just escaping my brain at rapid rates. Let me know if you've read any of these or any of the other books that I read. Let me know what your thoughts were. Of course, this one I'm most curious in. Let me know what you thought of the end and how it kind of wrapped up, because I just want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear if you really liked it, if you felt like it definitely didn't fit in with the series as much. I understand because it kind of wrapped in a little bit more with the last book. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions, if you've read any of these, if you like them. Let me know if you have any recommendations on what I read next. But that's it. That's all I read. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and I hopefully will get to see you in the next one. See ya!